I've made a somewhat provocative title here, Education, Not Indoctrination, for a purpose. The subtitle, however, is really the focus. The subtitle, Toward a Culture of Independent Thoughtfulness in ISKCON. This expression, independent thoughtfulness, has been brought up 2 or 3 times. Shesha Prabhu mentioned it, and I think 1 or 2 others. And I thought we can take a little time to explore this interesting phrase that Srila Prabhupada wrote in one letter. And what I would like to happen when it comes time for questions and answers, what I'm hoping is that more than questions, you will give suggestions to a question that I'm posing. And the question is, whoops, okay. First, the quote. This is a letter to Karandar from 1972. And this is a small excerpt from a quite long letter. Krishna consciousness movement is for training men to be independently thoughtful and competent in all types of departments of knowledge and action, not for making bureaucracy. Prabhupada, the context, I think, is significant. Prabhupada was concerned that an idea was coming that the organization of ISKCON should be centralized. Prabhupada didn't like that. He wanted independent centers, and he wanted the devotees who run these centers to be independently thoughtful. So the context of this statement, you could say, is management, but I would suggest that it goes much further than that, because Prabhupada says independently thoughtful and competent in all types of departments of knowledge and action, not for making bureaucracy. Okay, next slide. Oh. Here's the question: how can ISKCON education best foster a culture of independently thoughtful devotees? What I'm suggesting by the title of my presentation, my provocative title, is that perhaps something more could be done than we are presently doing to foster such a culture. Now, what I'd like to do is actually change my plan of presentation. And I'm wondering if you could move very quickly up to slide number 13. Here we are. Yes. I thought, let's cut to the chase. And here are my suggestions. And then we'll see how much time there is. I may elaborate on the issues behind this. So I want to suggest a few things, and perhaps you will have other suggestions for developing, for promoting, for fostering a culture of independent thoughtfulness. First of all, welcome questioning, taking the question seriously, not dismissively. I speak from experience of occasionally, many years ago, asking the speaker of the Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita a question which I thought was a reasonable question, and getting the question dismissed with, a 5-second answer. I felt insulted. And I'm saying this because I want to suggest something else about what I think is something of a problem. And it relates to what Aniruddha Prabhu mentioned in passing in his presentation yesterday. He said before coming to the temple in Melbourne, he felt some fear. He felt some fear of ISKCON, and he said, and many people have a similar feeling of fear. Why? We may ask, why would anyone be fearful of contacting, of connecting with devotees? Could it be because of fear? Could it be a fear of indoctrination? And if that's the case, why is that impression there? I also suggest encouraging debate and not rigging the outcome. Rigging the outcome means we have to come to a certain conclusion which we've decided in advance. There's a very rich tradition in India of debate, which is described in Nyaya Shastra. This could be revived if you look at the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. They have a very rich tradition of debate by very precise methods. I think we can encourage diversity. We speak about unity and diversity. What about diversity of viewpoints and not feeling threatened by that diversity? Now, here is the other side of what I see as an effect of what I'm calling, in a strong term, indoctrination. And that is a tendency in our society, within the society, to see things in black and white, and not appreciating that there are shades of gray, or if we don't like the color gray, shades of any color but black and white. So in our discourse within ISKCON, we often find an adversarial atmosphere, which perhaps is not necessary if the culture would be one which is more fostering of thoughtful, independent thoughtfulness. I would also suggest that we do research as educators and encourage others to do research in modern educational institutions. Educators do research. It keeps the process of education going. It's not that I learn, then I finish my learning, and then I teach, but it's an ongoing process throughout one's life. And it's a culture of research. Now, I know someone is going to say, but Prabhupada said there is no need for research. To which I would say, let us consider the distinction that Srila Prabhupada made between mental speculation and philosophical speculation. He condemned the former, and he allowed the latter. So in that spirit, research is something which can be done. I would suggest it needs to be done if our tradition is going to be a living tradition rather than simply relic of the past. Next, encourage speculation. Philosophical speculation, as I said, it is permitted. And the word speculation, I have another slide earlier which takes us to the etymology of the word speculation. It's actually a nice word. It's become something of a swear word amongst us, but it actually means viewing from a higher position. So if we speculate in that sense, could it be that it's something valuable? And lastly, I want to suggest that writing be encouraged. Now, this is something that I've been attempting to do with devotees, young devotees, with limited success, I have to say. I just we started a program inviting devotees to write something about first canto Bhagavatam. And I told them, you respond to one verse, you respond to one sentence in a purport of Srila Prabhupada from the first canto. You can talk about one word from first canto, or you can talk about a person, a personality, or you can talk about a chapter. Whatever you want to do, however you want to do it, please write maximum 1,200 words, something that inspires you from first canto. Well, this has gotten, because the question has come up, how to get devotees reading Prabhupada's books. These devotees have all been going back to read first canto Srimad Bhagavatam to find something to respond to in their writing. Okay, these are my suggestions. We may come back to these. Can we scroll back now to where we were? Okay, thank you. Next. What is indoctrination? It's a negative influence on a person's intellect. And I would suggest, and as I mentioned, as I asked a question sometimes, I felt insulted that the question wasn't taken seriously. Srila Prabhupada said that he wanted us to preach to the intelligent class of people. Intelligent people are, how shall I say it, intelligent. And if we want to attract them, we need to show that we take their intelligence seriously. And that means speaking and discussing on their level of intelligence. Next. Well, more on indoctrination. Let's go to the next. I feel that to some extent this has to be qualified, and it can be among various associations of devotees, but I think there's a tendency toward being self-congratulatory. We have the absolute truth. Ta-da! We got it. And now all you have to do is listen to us, and then you will have it as well. Perhaps a different way to say something appropriate would be, we have a tried and tested way of seeking and realizing the absolute truth. To me, this is more of an invitation. We have a tried and tested method. This may also work for you. Okay? Making this sort of artificial contrast, if you like, between education and indoctrination. Education, I would say, is intellectual stimulation, as opposed to indoctrination, which is intellectual abuse. Education is about how to think, whereas indoctrination is more about what to think. Education is about intellectual and epistemic humility, whereas indoctrination is about intellectual and epistemic pride and arrogance. Education is about communication, and so I would say we actually have a wonderful culture of dialogue, of samvada. Our literature is almost all in the form of samvada, which means dialogue. The Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavatam, all the Puranas, these are samvada. The opposite of this, indoctrination, is preaching, in a negative sense, of cultures of monologue. I speak to you, you listen to me. For a lot of people, this is not attractive. Can we learn to listen also to others? This is, I think, the question to include. Education is about independent thoughtfulness, whereas indoctrination is about dependent fundamentalism. And of course, this is what nobody is attracted to in the modern world. Education is about always seeking truth. And this refers to the fourth of the 4 verses of the Chatur Shloki, in which we are urged by Lord Narayan to always seek the absolute truth. And the opposite of this is a kind of pretentious religiosity, referred to also in the Bhagavatam as kuta dharma, parading one's dharma. And finally, education is about depth, it's about integrity of character, and the opposite of that, of course, is superficiality, what in the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita is referred to as Vedavada, or superficial explanation of Veda. Speaking of Veda, let's go to the next slide. Okay, here's the etymology of speculation. Let's keep going. The critical thinking of our tradition, Satyam Param Dhimahi. It's an invitation, Dhimahi, to reflect, to meditate upon supreme truth. This is our culture, to encourage people to reflect on that truth. And then, as I also mentioned, etavadeva jigyasyam, tattva jigyasunatmana, anvaya vyatarekhavyam yat syat sarvata sarvada. At all times, in all places, all times, one should be pursuing the truth. It's not that we get the truth and then the game is over. It's an ongoing, it's lifetime process. Okay? Again, our tradition is dialogical. And I think this is getting back to Hanumat Preshika Swami's point about philosophy of education as karma versus jnana. So the Gita is concerned with knowledge in terms of cultivating a certain set of personal qualities. It's not giving a library of facts. Our education systems should focus on the former, not on the latter. Okay? Now this gets into some rather complex discussion, and I just want to mention that if you're interested, you may find this on the internet, on YouTube. There was a conference in Gainesville just, 2 or 3 weeks ago on science and consciousness, something like this. One of the presenters was Radhika Raman Prabhu from Boise, Idaho. And he presented Jiva Goswami's discussion about pramana from Jiva Goswami's appendix to the Sandarbhas. And the point I want to bring here is his point, is that yes, we understand that our foundational pramana is shabda, is scripture. But what he has pointed out in his talk, you can turn to the next, is that there are 6 what he calls chinks in the armor of shabda. That there are ways of understanding that it's it's a nuanced story. That just to say Shabda is the foundation is not the whole story. So this opens up possibilities for acknowledging the importance of reason, the importance of intuition, and so on. He's given this in a very precise way. So I want to suggest that from our philosophy, we see also within our epistemology an invitation and encouragement that we foster this culture of independent thoughtfulness. So I'll stop there, and we can see if there are any suggestions for further cultivating this culture, fostering this culture. Thank you. Yes, Mother Urmila. Yes, Urmila Devi.
In the meantime, can we take a question here, Maharaj?
You want answers rather than questions?
I'm hoping for some suggestions to add to.
All right, well, one answer is, let's get our hermeneutics together. And we don't have this yet. With what you have on that slide. So talk to Radhika Raman. Let's get that in our supplementary material as part of our hermeneutics presentation that we're working on with the SAC. And let's get hermeneutics instruction in ISKCON in general.
Yes.
Let's get this finished, get it approved by the GBC, get it out, integrate it in the Shastra courses, and train people how to do practical samvada and train people in hermeneutics dialogue. So that would be my first suggestion.
Good.
My second suggestion would be that on the level of our ISKCON management, that we have this organizational development study, but myself being degreed in leadership, that we should be creating a Brahminical culture. I would suggest that we are heading more and more and more to a Vaishya and Shudra culture. And we are promoting centralization and bureaucracy like anything in ISKCON. We're pushing it as the be-all and end-all solution, the panacea to all of our problems, centralize more, bureaucracy, jai.
Corporation.
Well, let's go to American for-profit, corporate, tangible product, paid worker model and superimpose that on an international volunteer, intangible product organization, and then think we're going to have a Brahminical culture. So that's my second suggestion, is move towards a Brahminical organization of an adhocracy.
Yes, thank you. Very good.
Thank you. Any other suggestions, Maharaj?
Let me respond just for information for the others, because Urmila Devi mentioned hermeneutics. How many of you know what the word hermeneutics means? So there are quite many of you who don't know what this word means, and you may like to find out what it means. It's a fancy word for interpretation. And there is a massive project which is going on now, which is coming out of the SAC, Shastric Advisory Council. It's going to be implemented as a training program for devotees all over the movement. And Urmila Devi is overseeing that. Shesha Prabhu.
Shish Prabhu, would you like to?
Marj, we seem to attract people that want indoctrination. And so how do we break that cycle? Because that reinforces our weakness to indoctrinate rather than be independently thoughtful.
Very interesting point. I think we have to start from our side and change our culture from within. We have to become conscious of it. That's why I thought it may be useful that I speak on this point as part of the conference. And I think a lot of discussion needs to be done about this in directions which Urmila Devi has suggested. But we have to start somewhere. We can't put up a sign, keep out if you're into indoctrination. That might not work. Maybe you have a suggestion. Okay.
Another comment or question from Eknath Prabhu there.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your wonderful presentation. One suggestion is that we have the GBC College for Leaderships. So maybe perhaps this kind of material can be included in our presentations and curriculum.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Good. Next, Venugopal Prabhu here.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. This is a question rather than suggestion, Maharaj. Please kindly give an example as mental speculation versus philosophical speculation, Maharaj.
Mental speculation versus philosophical speculation. Off the top of my head, mental speculation, first of all, it's within the limits of the mind. And what does the mind do? It accepts, it rejects. And so it does not see subtlety. Philosophical speculation, as we generally understand it, is in pursuit of comprehension of sadhu shastra and guru. Whereas mental speculation is sort of wandering anywhere and everywhere without that purpose as the end purpose. I would put it that way, briefly.
Thank you. Next question from Kalakanta Prabhu here.
Thank you for a beautiful presentation. My question, intuition, says that sometimes indoctrination would come from a lack of identity or security of my own identity. And in fields like I deal with many times, varnashram, self-sufficiency, traditional education, there seems to be a tendency for a lack of backup of our institution. So my first question is, do you think that indoctrination actually comes from a lack of inner security of identity, who I really am in this movement, what I really stand for? And the second is, when there's lack of clarity as a movement, it tends to indoctrination movements or something like that.
Oh, okay. Insecurity and lack of clarity as causes for pursuing indoctrination. Both, yes, to put it briefly. Insecurity, of course, may be an individual sort of psychological sense that we all may have to a greater or lesser degree, which then gets perpetuated in a group. And then it becomes what's the word I want? Well, it becomes reified. It becomes the modus operandi for the organization. I have a bit of a rant on this subject, but there's no time. But it relates to the question of editing Srila Prabhupada's books in relation to our finding our voice, our individual and also collective voice of speaking Krishna consciousness. It's a rant and there's no time for it. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much. Maharaj, there's a saying that you get what you measure. I mean, in organizations, they generally follow certain measurement parameters and they get those results, and people are influenced to behave that way. So, to achieve the aims that you mentioned, what are the things that we should measure so that we get those kind of people move in those directions?
Whoa, that's over my head. We need some social psychologists to help us with that. To what extent measuring is a priority, I would question, because it could also be self-defeating, I think, because we start to think in deterministic terms, which may be counterproductive. At some point, yeah, if someone finds ways that are meaningful and beneficial, it might be good.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. One last comment or question there.
You mentioned debate. I know in the Western academic sense there are various rules for debate, and I've understood that there is a Vedic or some sort of system of debate. But I've yet to see any debating in ISKCON according to any sort of either Western or Vedic or any type of thing where you have a... Actually, there is one place I've seen it, but I won't get into that. That's not debating. Anyway, so that would be a suggestion that we actually do have a debate on something.
Yeah.
And have it, according to some rules.
Yeah.
Maybe start with something less controversial, but...
Good luck finding something less controversial.
I'm sure there's some things. Anyway, that's a suggestion.
Thank you.
Have a debate, publicize it, and record it, and then see what happens.
Thank you. Good idea. Okay.